night to everyone, and welcome back to another episode on the EaglePod. Today I have the honor of introducing our guest speaker, Dr. Egzona Morina. She is a postdoctoral associate and teaching fellow in the biology department at MIT, as well as a lecturer in neurobiology at the Harvard Division of Continuing Education. She's earned her PhD in neuroscience from UCL, focusing on novel behavioral paradigms for examining anticipatory postural adjustments in mice. Before her doctorate, Dr. Morina had completed her master's in neuroscience and education at Columbia University. She's also founder of a nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing STEM education in Kosovo. So welcome to the EaglePod, Dr. Egzona Morina. I'm so excited to speak with you today. So thank you for joining me. To start off, can you kind of tell us a little bit about your background and what brought you to the States?
So first, thank you for the invite.
Yeah.
I'm very excited. I always like sort of being part of our Albanian community and contributing in whatever way. So my journey really began, it did begin in Pristina, but when I was 4 years old, we actually moved to Belgium due to the war. So I did, I would say, I guess most of my schooling in Belgium, really. And that's also where I started playing tennis. This was more of an accident, though. It was just, we had some tennis courts near where we lived. And my parents decided that, to integrate a bit better in the culture, let's have her play some sports. And it was like these group lessons. And then it just turned out that I'm pretty good at it. So we kind of decided to, take some more private lessons that continue. And I think sometimes what people might not appreciate is that tennis was like a central part of my life. It was really, really important. It was kind of, my dad used to say, if someone asks you, the tennis is not your hobby, it's your profession.
Okay.
So like before school, because I went to just a normal school from like 8:30 to 4. Before school, I would, go do like running or like a sort of conditioning, strength and conditioning with my coach, then go to school. And then after school, I would go to tennis practice for like an hour and a half or two. So it took a lot of dedication. But it paid off, because then that was sort of my ticket to the US. So I got full scholarship to be able to play tennis and study. And then so I started, after that, I think tennis became more of it did become more of a hobby. Because then I really focused on my academic career, although I still play tennis to this day. And so, I've never quite forgotten about it. But it has helped me a lot throughout my life. So after I finished my undergrad, I started my master's in neuroscience. And then meanwhile, I was also working in a lab, and on the weekends I was teaching tennis. And so obviously, having been kind of a semi-professional player, you get paid quite good money. So that helped. Then I moved to London for my PhD, also in neuroscience. Even there, like, again, I met a lot of people through tennis, and it's surprising how I don't know, it kind of just like changes the conversation as well. And I think even while I was doing my PhD, people were always kind of like, oh, you're a scientist, but also this like athlete, and so you can like play this sport at a certain level. And that was always nice. I think it always gave me this feeling of kind of having like this superpower, which honestly sometimes is nice, especially during your PhD when you feel like nothing's working and you don't know what you're doing.
It's like a de-stressor for you?
It's a de-stressor for sure. And it was also kind of like, I don't know how to describe it best besides just you know, if I was in the lab and nothing was working, and then I would go play tennis for 2, 3 hours or something, and I would be like, at least I'm really good at tennis, you know, so that's fine.
It's like your secret backup plan.
Exactly, exactly. It's like a confidence boost,
Yeah.
and like, you know, it's good. I think that's important to have. I think especially if you're pursuing an academic career, there's a lot of things that might not work out.
Mhm.
I think it's good to, for yourself, have something that can mentally sort of keep you motivated, you know, and I think my biggest advice after having done a PhD would be to not make it like, don't center your life on a PhD. You still have your real life with people and relationships, and that should be the center. And you should be able to get your sort of empowerment from that, and not your job or your PhD, because I don't know, to me, what I've learned is that, you know, jobs come and go. Oftentimes it's also about luck.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah, just go with the flow and
yeah, I would say
enjoy
so.
life along the way. Have
Yeah.
you had moments where you've been like burnt out? How did you kind of deal with that?
Oh yeah, I would say, you know, burnout is my middle name. Um, no, actually not that often. I think,
Okay.
well, I think also in our culture specifically, like burnout is not necessarily a thing. I think it's
I
like, if you're
agree.
not burning out, are you really doing it right though?
Yeah.
But I think when I had burnouts, it was, I think mostly I didn't really realize it, but then when I did started paying attention to it more was when it was sort of affecting me physically.
Mhm.
Like I had a period where maybe I would get like kind of sick
Mhm.
uh, every other month or so, and at a time where I was like, you know, in college, full on playing tennis and studying, and I mean, arguably that was much tougher. I was perfectly fine. I had time to party as well and everything, and it was like a whole different thing. And then all of a sudden now, not that much later, you know, wasn't that much older.
Yeah.
It just was downhill. Like I was tired all the time, and so I think this is also why my what I said earlier, like don't make it all about that, because I would come home sometimes at like 10 p.m., which is ridiculous because, you know, I was not going to cure cancer with my PhD. I wasn't saving anybody's life. I was
Yes.
doing science, and it's like basic science. So you're kind of just, you're doing experiments to try and figure out how the brain works. It wasn't like, nothing was life or death,
Yeah.
but I made it like that in my head because it was so important to me. And I think that kind of took a toll on my body.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I took a step back kind of, even now, like I pay a lot of attention to how I eat, what I eat. I have, you obviously you can't see, but I have like a treadmill under my standing desk. And so I like walk all the time as I'm working. Cause I noticed even now, you know, at least when I was living in London, we would bike to the lab and bike back, which was like an hour total. So that was really good.
Yeah.
And then when we moved now here to Boston, I often work from home, and it's like a lot of reading and a lot of sitting or standing. And again, I felt like my body kind of being like, you know, we went from you being an athlete to what is this?
Sedentary.
Yeah. So now, you know, I try to hit those, well, I do hit those 10,000 steps every day.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, it's been really, really nice actually. It makes me feel good. It makes me focused.
Yeah.
You know, research shows that it's very, very good for you. It helps to be more productive. So yeah, I think my advice for burnout would just be kind of, because what works for me might not work for you, right?
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes I also like to paint or draw,
Mhm.
but my first incline is like sports or like something athletic. So just listen to like yourself, listen to your body, and find a way to kind of relax yourself. For example, I'm not good at meditating. My husband is, but I just, I'm just all the time.
That's what
And
happens to me too. I've tried it. There's this app, I forget the name of it. It's pretty popular in the
Headspace,
meditation world.
maybe?
Yes, Headspace.
Yeah.
Yes. I tried to do that for like a month, but like I could not. I found my brain wandering. Like I could not just like
Yeah.
cut down and do
Yeah.
it
What
right.
what did work sometimes was they have this I know what it's called, but they basically just like tell a whole like story
Mm-hmm.
about I don't know, like, sounds, and you're in this like old antique shop, and that puts me to sleep. So because I like imagine the whole thing, and it's like I'm still kind of using my brain the way I do, so that helps. And then at some point, um, I found this like completely random like podcast on like organic chemistry. It was like the whole book, 2 minutes. I like I have no idea what's being said. Just fall asleep 2 minutes.
But
Yeah.
I definitely agree with you. And I mean, I feel like this kind of applies to everyone, though, to listen to your body and make sure you're eating the right foods.
Mm.
Make sure you're getting doing some sort of physical activity outside of your work, whether it's a quick 20-minute walk outside or jog outside, whatever you can do to implement that in your day. And I feel like it goes a long way. Like long term, if you start taking those like little steps here and there and being a little bit more intentional about like what you put in your body and what you do and how what you're thinking about. Like, are you staying positive? Are you now people say like the positive words of what
Affirmation.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I don't like doing that. I don't know why that seems
Yeah.
weird to me to like look at yourself in the mirror and say like today's gonna be a good day. But just try to stay positive and try to I feel like for me, I try to look for the good in every day and wake up with the mindset of like today's gonna be a great day. Whatever happens, happens. I'm just gonna move along and see things in a more positive light because we all have our like good and bad days. But I've definitely been burned out a couple times in my life.
Yeah.
You just like get so overwhelmed and then you can't even perform at your like best, highest level. So you
Yeah.
just have to
And I
reflect.
feel like then you get overwhelmed because you feel overwhelmed, and then
Yeah,
you get anxious because now
the
it's
whole
like
cycle.
it's a
You
whole
have to
cycle.
break.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but
So,
also I also kind of don't really use words of affirmation. I don't know why. And I was just wondering as you said that, and I was thinking, is it again something like in our culture where
mhm,
obviously like my parents have told me many times like we're proud of you and they love me and all
yeah.
these things, but I don't think it's been like I think for example if I won like a participation trophy,
Mhm.
that was like what the hell is that? Like that doesn't count. And I think maybe when you have people who are like, oh, yes, you did your best and that was so good, like I think maybe that's the kind of person who's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to tell myself words of affirmation every day.
Mhm.
But for me, I've had this discussion with, I think I want to say like my more Western European friends
Mhm.
where I kind of like that about our culture where it's sort of this demand of like you can do more and more. Like I've learned to sort of deal with it where again I don't burn myself out, but
Yeah.
it has also been a big part of my personality where this is just who I am. This is, how my culture also is like our parents are always like pushing us and like, you can either be a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer, like take your pick, it's not. And I kind of like that now as an adult because it's made me like I'm always kind of striving for the next thing.
That's
And I think a big credit is our culture, our mentality. Um, I definitely think it's important for I think my mom would like to call it feedback and not criticism.
okay.
But I think from my point of view, I knew what it was.
Yeah.
I think about this all the time because, my husband and I also like want to become parents soon, and we talk about these things. And because we grew up differently, he's Italian and he's from like a well-off family where he didn't necessarily have this a constant, like, what are you doing? Where are you going? What's your plan for the next 5, 10 years? And yet somehow we're very, very similar people. And he's also doing a postdoc at MIT. We met during our PhD. And yeah, sometimes I find that interesting. But I think so when I was younger, and I was doing this whole, like, tennis and school, and I was doing it differently, like, because they in Belgium they have like sort of a boarding school where if you're like in the top 10 or something of Belgium and you're like under 16, I think, they onboard you and then you just kind of stay there and you just play tennis and go to school, kind of. As long as you're just not like kind of illiterate. And my parents didn't want that. So they committed to, like, we're gonna drive you every day wherever you need to be, but you're gonna go to regular, like, private school.
Yeah.
And at some point, I just I didn't want to. Like, it was so much. I didn't really have like any friends. I wasn't going into any parties. I was just not home. Like, I was always playing tennis, and the weekends I was playing tournaments or something. So I remember many times where I said, like, oh, I just want to be happy and I want to do this. And I think as a parent, it's very difficult to gauge how much you should push your kid because they don't know. And I mean, the brain only fully develops at the age of 25. And so I think it's hard, definitely hard as a parent to find that good middle ground. But my parents, I think, were always very, they obviously loved me very much. They put me first always. But yeah, they would take turns, to try and sort of not like make me, but kind of like push me and be like, I understand that right now it's hard and you're saying, oh, I just want to be happy, like, but this is you investing in your future.
Yeah.
And of course, as a kid, you're like, what does that mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm happy right now because you won't let me
Yeah.
go on or something. But then as an adult, you're like, oh man, I am so lucky that they like did not back off, did not give up at any point, no matter what I threw at them.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very grateful, very lucky, very fortunate because I definitely wouldn't be here at all. And I would not have the mindset that I do. So I do think it's important. I think obviously there's way of communicating, there's way of delivering things. Sometimes I mean, I want to say I'm a fan of like tough love when it's needed. I think I'm like that just in my daily relationships as well. And especially as an adult, I don't really have the patience for if someone is making kind of excuses, but we all have flaws, obviously. I don't mind mistakes. I think I've become more comfortable of like, just own your mistakes and then we can build from there and move on. So yeah, I think I think criticism is a
Important.
should be a part of your upbringing or just, yeah.
Great. So what inspired you to pursue a PhD in neuroscience? I actually majored in neuroscience and psych in undergrad. And one of the reasons I did was because how complex the brain was. Like, yeah, I just felt like I wanted to understand how we learn and just consciousness in general. And then I learned about neuroplasticity, and I was just like, how does your brain adapt and learn and form all those new neural connections throughout life? And so that's what got me interested, but
Yeah.
never interested enough to get a PhD in neuroscience.
Honestly, you did it right. I feel like I've done a few of these where I've now kind of said this story somewhat publicly, so I'm gonna stick to
Okay.
I'm stick to the truth instead of
Okay.
just, oh yeah, it was very I basically I finished college and so I did psychology, like clinical psychology with a minor in art,
Mhm.
which
How
which
odd.
was my way of like rebelling.
Yeah.
Completely useless. It didn't mean anything. And then I had I had no idea what I wanted to do, none whatsoever. So I worked at like a tennis club, teaching tennis, working the like being a receptionist as well, telling people what court they're on.
Yeah.
So soon enough, that became kind of boring.
Mm-hmm.
And I really didn't know what to do next. So then I decided, okay, let's do a master's. And I thought maybe something like psychopathology, like looking at why mental disorders establish themselves or what happens. And then, so somewhere in between that time of me planning on applying and all that, I completely randomly meet this guy who was doing a PhD in neuroscience. Like, this was completely random. I was out at a club with my friends, it was Halloween, and this guy starts chatting and he's like, oh, I do neuroscience. And I'm like, what does that mean? Also, you're trying like really hard right now. I don't know these words that you're throwing at me. And I'm like, you don't have to make stuff up, And he's like, no, this is like a real thing. So I end up just like chatting to this guy about like his research. I'm completely like, enchanted by what he's telling me. I had no idea this field really existed, like what was it about? And so eventually I was like, oh, I realized that nice guy, but I didn't really like him. I just wanted to be him. So that was the first thing. Like I applied to do a master's in neuroscience. And then from there, it was just like, it was kind of like when I found tennis, it just fit, it felt right. I love it. I think it's interesting. But that's the real story. I
Oh my
did
God,
not.
that's so cool.
I never like because for example, my husband, he's like, oh, I knew I wanted to be a scientist since I was 8, and he's done like all these steps and some different things, and I'm like, no, I
So
met
have
him
you thought
together.
about maybe did you want to be like a physician beforehand or
Yeah,
okay. Okay.
yeah. I had this in Belgium at some point. They did this like article where it's like in a newspaper, this big picture of me, my tennis racket, and like like
Yeah, cool.
like one of those. The title is like, oh, maybe I'll be a doctor one day.
Yeah.
And at the time, yeah, I wanted to be a medical doctor. But then even during my PhD, actually, I would do these internships to like follow around physicians like in London. But every time I did, I was like, I'm so happy I didn't pursue that because it's too many interactions with people like all the time. And I mean, the few times that like I saw some patients who had like gangrene from diabetes, all I had to tell myself was like, please don't faint or throw up. This would be super embarrassing. That's all I thought. So I was like, I don't think I
So
made the
maybe you
real,
made the right choice then.
yeah, every time. Because every now and then I get that like itch. I'm like, oh, maybe. And
Yeah.
then I go and I'm like, no. I've also done like been into like a neurosurgery and stuff. This is funny because I think a lot of us women maybe watched Grey's Anatomy growing up.
Oh yeah.
And so I was like in scrubs, I was in this operating room, and the surgeon, I always dream of the moment where a surgeon is gonna be like, here, Exona, you take over, like you want to try.
Yeah.
Completely illegal, obviously, so no
Yeah.
one's doing that. But at some point, they were doing a surgery with like the little robot arms.
Yeah.
And I was watching, asking questions, and it seemed like the doctor and I, like, we had a good sort of camaraderie going on. And he was like also like he loved getting these questions. And at some point he says to me, do you want to try? And I was like, oh my God, the day has come. I can finally, someone's gonna finally let me
Yes.
try, and they're gonna be like, wow, you're a natural, and just speed me through medical school. That all went through my mind in like 5 seconds. And then I'm like, oh my God, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so he's like, okay, good, get ready, blah, blah. And I come and stand next to him again. And he's like, well, what are you doing? It's like, oh, I'm ready. And he's like, okay, the robot over there. And I was like, Of course, obviously, I was
Obviously.
do the patient, of course.
It
It's just,
all worked out for the best.
yeah, it did. It did. Yeah, yeah.
And now it's time for a fun fact of the day. Today's fun fact is honoring Ismail Kadare, Albania's world-renowned novelist who's recently passed away at the age of 88. He's celebrated for his novels, essays, and poetry, and Kadare was frequently nominated for the Nobel Prize in Literature. He had been a leading literary figure in Albania since the 1960s. His writing often delved into themes of totalitarianism, Albanian history, and the human experience. His work has also been published in 45 languages. The New York Times wrote that he was a national figure in Albania comparable in popularity perhaps to Mark Twain in the United States, and that there is hardly an Albanian household without a Kadare book. And now back to our guest speaker.
Can you tell us a little bit about your current research in neuroscience?
Yeah, so the nice thing about neuroscience is that you can pick so many different areas within it. So I first started working in a lab at NYU where the lab's focus was on the oxytocin hormone, also called like the love hormone. And I found there that I didn't really enjoy sort of the molecular neuroscience side. So, like pipetting a lot of things and just working at the bench, and it's a lot of waiting, and you're doing like antibody purification, all that. And I thought I enjoy the experimental side, like more behavior. So then during my PhD, I switched, and my research was on looking at anticipatory postural adjustment. So these are adjustment of our posture before we do any movement. But this can also be like, because they're so subtle and small, these movements, we don't think about them consciously. So like, for example, right now I'm standing and my brain is constantly sort of reevaluating my posture, because maybe, my left leg's a bit tired, or my right leg, and has to readjust sort of the signal it sends to different muscles, and how to maintain, an upright posture. So it has to engage different muscles as well. So I wanted to look at how that process happens. But in mice, these movements are like around 100 to 200 milliseconds. And then I'm like, oh, let's do this in mice, and, make it really hard on myself. So during my PhD, I looked at that and I had to sort of build a whole new platform, which halfway through my PhD, I was like, oh, maybe I should have just been an engineer, because I really like this part. But another good thing about neuroscience is, again, you can come at it from different perspectives. Like you can be an engineer, you can be a mathematician, and then you can still do sort of neuroscience work.
Yeah.
And so after I finished my PhD, I found myself once again not really fully knowing, do I want to continue in academia, because, of all the sort of the burnouts, the publishing, the, stressful. And I'm almost finishing this postdoc I'm doing now at MIT, which is in digital education. So this was more in line with the nonprofit that I have, where we promote STEM education. This was more along those lines of like, I want to look at the research around education and how to sort of build good content. This was specifically in biology. And then I realized there was this one talk about like climate science. And what I didn't fully appreciate is that also climate science is similar to neuroscience, in the sense that, again, you can come at it from different angles. You can look at it in different ways. There's different sort of facets to it. So I became more and more interested in that, and I started reading more papers on like, oh, how does climate change affect the brain? And so that's where I'm at now. That's where I sort of settled, and that's kind of now the long-term plan of hopefully I'll be starting a new postdoc in September where I just focus on that specific theme, but also I want to focus it on Kosovo. So I don't, you know, I shamelessly say is like, I don't care about the US here because you have a bunch of scientists looking at that.
Yes.
Nobody's looking at like our area, the developing countries. And I think it would just be interesting to also have, you know, young scientists from our countries and kind of have not just the opportunity, but more the motivation to look at this data because it affects them directly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the research I'm trying to get started now. It's looking at how air pollution affects our brain, how extreme temperatures. So oftentimes they can have a direct impact where they can cause like cognitive decline, brain fog, you know, and then an indirect impact is like causing depression, even Alzheimer.
Is this going to be more like a longitudinal study or
It can be. So yeah, I have no idea how much like data there truly is.
Okay.
Because I kind of what I'm focused on right now is kind of catching up with this new field. Like it's called like environmental neuroscience. And so I'm just reading a lot of papers of like what people are looking at, what they do. Mental health is also kind of still, you know, I don't want to say, I think people have definitely become more aware and like have educated themselves much more. But I still think it's kind of a like, you know, you'll get over it or something like that.
Not accepted as an actual problem.
I think we're getting there, but I think yeah, there's still some space for growth.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Wow. Yeah. No, that's really cool. I'm looking forward to, you know, hearing about all your research and reading the paper when it comes out in a couple of years. Yeah, doing big work. And especially since you're focused on in Kosovo, I think that's even more amazing because here in America, you're right, we have so many scientists focused on all our issues over here. But
besides it being obviously my home country, it's also the research itself shows that there's not a lot actually focused on developing countries, which could be an interesting perspective because in developing countries, especially now in Kosovo, there's a lot of increase in industrialization, urbanization, and so that's obviously not good for the environment. And because there's not a lot of, you know, sort of stringent policies regarding environment, the combination of that is probably not, I mean, most likely not good.
yeah.
And so I think it becomes more important to kind of say, hey, we with the proper research, we can potentially become some sort of, you know, proof of concept or like a case study of like, you know, the small country. Before we continued sort of building out, we took some measures based on this data. And you can see now that, you know, this helps, or you can even just start with little things in like particular places in Kosovo where let's say the temperature is very extreme or the air pollution is very bad, to do some like small preventative things. So it's not just like, because obviously I don't think anyone's going to give me funding if I just say it's my country and I want to help.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, so the impact, obviously, I'm hoping the direct impact would be on my country, but it would also contribute to the scientific community, which is ultimately what the goal should be of a scientist.
I love that.
Yeah.
You're so inspirational. So let's talk about your nonprofit, a chair and founder of the Xheladin Xhufe Morina Foundation. Yes, a nonprofit organization providing support for the education of students in Kosovo in areas of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, also known as STEM. So you have the Brain Camp coming up.
This year it's July 15th to 19th. And this year we also worked with UBT, like a university in Pristina, and to sort of host the camp. Because often like we either need like a few technological things or not, or like it depends every year. We do different things. And so this year we're organizing it in Pristina. We have around 42 signups. And these are students from the age of 16 to 20. And then we're also at the same time holding it at Prizren with the Atomi Institute. So this is an organization that identifies gifted students, so students with an IQ above 140. And there they have around 60 students. So in total, we're hoping to, have around 100 students taking brain camp in 2 different cities. We have 8 teachers from all over the world, like people just send in an application. None of them are Albanian. Like the dream one day is to have a lot of Albanian neuroscientists coming to teach. But yeah, people really enjoy it. We have a whole sort of, from the first time I organized it, I made sure to not be one of the teachers, but sort of hang back and like look at what's working, what's not working, keep track of like we have this like knowledge bank, which is the different teachers that have taught over the years. They make their own PowerPoint slides. I don't like micromanage them or anything. I just give them like, I would like for you to touch on, brain anatomy, cell type, blah, blah, blah. Exactly. And then you can figure out how you want to teach it. And so I think we've had around 30 something teachers over the years, because one year during COVID, we held it online and we did it over 5 countries. So we had Kosovo, Albania, Latvia, Hungary, and North Macedonia. So we had over like 120 students, 24 teachers, again, from all over the world. And yeah, I think, people enjoy it. It's fun. We do like a little quiz at the end where the students are tasked with coming up sort of with their own project, which is always fun because, fun and potentially, disturbing sometimes.
What do they come up with?
There was one year where they wanted to understand how cats land on their feet always. And so the setup was like, we're going to throw the cat out of the window and then have it like record some brain activity. And then they wanted to compare it to humans. And they're like, and then we're going to get like a stunt man and do the same.
Oh my God.
And they're like, okay, yeah. In theory, sure. A lot of ethical issues around it. But it's always fun. It's good because I like the creativity, the innovation. So what we have provided so far is 4 scholarships to individual students. This usually it means like, if someone wants to go to do like, one person wanted to go do the Yale summer program, another person wanted funding because they had made it to the physics Olympics, another person needed it to sort of I think start the initial part of their like master's or something. Another person got a scholarship to do this like STEM activity in Kosovo with like elementary school students. So we provide those scholarships. We organize brain camp, we've organized like conferences, and right now we actually got in touch with the Kosovo's Organization of Medical Students and the Albanian Committee of Medical Students, I think they're called. So with the 2 organizations, we're hoping to organize a conference in 2025 where we invite Albanian scientists and physicians from abroad to give like a talk and also to have some sort of roundtable chat with, get a better idea of if we just have an honest, open conversation of, things that are maybe necessary, things that aren't working very well in both our countries, just see where the conversation goes. They have this program, I believe it's called Scope, where they do an exchange of medical students to different countries. And so we sponsored 6 students to go to Bosnia in different fields of medicine. So after that, we're trying to see if we can kind of have enough funding to just fund that throughout the next 5 years, let's say, because I think it's a really great program. And for the foundation, sometimes I like when it's just that I have to look for funding, because I do like grant applications and whatever. I haven't actually done any fundraising yet. I have no idea how I keep getting away with that, by the way, so I'm gonna knock on wood.
Yeah.
I prefer those because then all I have to do is write grants and look for funding, and then we can just sponsor these really good programs. Like, I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I can just support really good things, and I think that's a good way to do it too. So besides that, the three new things that are
Oh my
coming.
gosh, that's so exciting. You have so many things coming up, and
Yeah.
I'm so happy to, I would love to be a part of it, by the way. And
Oh yeah.
and I
I
will,
I
yeah.
always I have people who will say this, and then I very sincerely always feel like, because nobody gets paid, obviously everyone does this
Yeah.
voluntarily, and then I always just feel bad. Like, I've had people, for example, be like, oh, I can take care of like the Instagram account. I've had like 3 or 4 people do that,
Yeah.
and I'm like, yeah, but don't worry about it. Like, I just have no time to do any of that social
Yeah.
media. I think yesterday I posted something on LinkedIn in like God knows how long.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm always happy to have people help, but I always also feel guilty because I don't know, I just do.
Don't feel guilty.
But especially with this conference, I would love to like
Yeah.
have your help and maybe just like your expertise or something, or some
And try to
suggestions.
market it out to people. Like, I
Exactly.
feel
Yeah.
like we know, I've worked with Shachata Saps too. I feel like we
Yeah.
could bring in so many people and just spread the news about it. And whoever's
Yeah, I
interested,
think
they
I
can.
think it would be great to just have it, because we're planning on having it one day in Pristina, one day in Tirana,
Okay.
and it would be nice to have it like hybrid for both of them as
Yeah.
well. So I think that could probably bring in definitely more people. So besides Brain Camp, we're also currently working on Climate Camp. Surprise. And we're working with MIT Energy Initiative, because that's where I originally sort of heard that talk and got more interested in climate science.
Yeah.
So the idea there is that it's similar to Brain Camp, and we teach sort of students how to appropriately look at all of this climate information and how to appropriately use the data and what to do with it. And because it's part of because I'm working with the MIT Energy Initiative, and they have a program where they have grad students, they were like, oh, we could provide the students that could come and teach. And I was like, perfect. So I have to pester anybody. So we're working on that. I also, in November, I won like a grant where I can actually just show you. I'm developing this like children's book on the brain. It's
Oh
called
my
Brain.
God, that's so cute.
And so the nice thing about it is, so it's illustrations, but it's also with augmented reality. I don't know if I have my app here, because we're obviously, I didn't do the illustrations. This was a very talented guy called Joey Wall. So we have this app here that is part of the book. And basically, a nice thing is also that we have it in English, Albanian, Italian, and Ukrainian, because the team I'm working with is Ukrainian. And so you can pick the language, you can pick here sort of, you can have the age, so ages 5, 7, or 10. And the nice thing about augmented reality is that you have the same book, but you have all these ages. So if I press here, I don't know if this is going to come across, but so you see
Oh,
these
I see
kids
that.
coming sort
Kids
of.
are gonna love this.
Yeah,
Kids are addicted to technology.
exactly. That was a very poor display of it, but
Yeah.
so basically that's the idea, so that kids are always using their parents' phones or whatever. And I was like, okay, let's keep that in there, but let's make it educational, fun, and not forget about books. And fun fact, this cute little dog over here. It's actually our dog.
Oh,
Um,
purchase this book or not out yet?
It's not out yet, not
No.
just yet. We're very close. We're just finishing the final touches on the app, and
Okay.
then I need to adjust the margins on this book. So the idea is that BrainBook will serve as some sort of income to the foundation.
Yeah.
So it'll be sold everywhere, but then in Kosovo, I would like to donate it to different libraries so people can just use it. Because it's kind of like, once you can have, the idea is that you can have kids of different ages and they can all use the book because there's different levels. Or if your kid is just like super smart or as they grow up, they want it a bit more complicated, that's kind of what it serves for. So that it's like kind of a more long-term investment. Not that long-term, but
Yeah. Love it.
and then the last thing is actually more of because obviously my husband's also a trustee on the foundation, and so his research is on brain-computer interfaces, and so it's more computational neuroscience, and so he started this initiative called BCI, Brain-Computer Interface Initiative, and it's also part of the foundation where in February at MIT, he organized the first BCI hackathon. So basically, we had a few companies not donate, but like lend some EEG headsets and a sort of little robotic like car. And so the students who signed up for the hackathon had to find a way to make these two communicate and kind of make the cart maneuver like this road based on obviously their thoughts, like the way they're in this case, it was their motor cortex was working. So for example, your motor cortex can light up if you're like moving a certain direction or like your head or your finger or whatever. And then what you do with an EEG is you hone in on those signals, and then you use those signals, translate them into sort of an output signal into this cart.
Wow.
Then you see the cart moving. And so, we had like, I think around a little less than 80 students or something who showed up. But obviously, this was at MIT, so it was very, I don't want to say it, but it was very like nerdy. And so the idea is also to bring this again to our respective countries. We want to do it globally, not just in Kosovo or in Albania. He's organizing right now a BCI one online, so that you can participate from everywhere. And I'll definitely let you know to sort of spread the word and people can sign up.
Yeah, for sure. I'm more than happy to. Those are some 3 amazing projects you have going on. So I love that. And I know a lot of people would be happy to interested in joining and happy to be part of it. And especially after hearing about your nonprofit organization and just the mission and vision of it. I love that. Like who wouldn't want to support such a great organization? So
thank you.
yeah.
I also realized recently, and I don't know if anyone saw or cared enough to go on the website, but I put a massive donate button on there, but it's not working yet. So
okay, so don't donate yet.
I feel like sometimes, when people talk about ADHD, I'm definitely not diagnosed or anything. I don't plan on being, but I definitely feel like I have that sometimes. I remember the moment where I was like, I'm gonna make this the donate button, I'm gonna connect it, and I never did. And then recently I looked again at the website and I was like, oh. Yeah.
Can you share any advice for other women pursuing careers in STEM, particularly in neuroscience, or just students in Kosovo interested in pursuing a higher education in science? What advice do you have for them?
If you're really sure of something, if you really want to do it, if it's your dream, just find ways to make it happen. That's kind of all I did. There's no big secret. There's a lot of rejection involved. I've been rejected many times. I've obviously been rejected much more than I've, had to accept something. So for me, I think I started developing more of a mindset that rejection is it's not failure, it's just a delay. Stay with it, you know, and be on your own timeline. I don't know if you saw this, like, I think it was on LinkedIn that I first saw it. There was a woman who is 102 and just got her master's from Stanford. Her story was like, she had a master's in education because she was a teacher, and she was going to get it in, I believe, 1936 or something. But then her husband was called to fight in the war, and so it was
Massive delay.
yeah, it was delayed. But then she went back and got it.
Wow.
And it's like, just be on your own timeline. Don't, I mean, unless, you know, I don't know, your goal is I want to be the youngest scientist ever. That can also be a dream. So that's what I would say. Don't put too much pressure, but just, you know, pressure yourself in the right ways.
Okay, and so now on to our rapid fire round where I ask you 10 fun questions. So, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Coffee. What's your favorite kind of coffee?
The one where I don't taste the coffee. Oh, that's so
You just
sad.
need your caffeine.
Yeah.
Okay. Favorite vacation place?
Ooh, we're going to Hawaii soon, so I'm hoping that will become my favorite place.
Hawaii is beautiful. I've never been, but I know some friends that have, and
Yeah.
the pictures they send me, it's just amazing. Favorite thing to do in your free time?
Honestly, just hang out with my husband and our dog.
A favorite Albanian dish?
I would say pite me kompira, like pite with potatoes.
Oh, favorite dish to cook?
Eggs. I'm more of a baker, I would say. My
Really?
husband is,
Oh, okay.
because he's Italian, so
Oh, obviously, yes. You get the best pasta dishes and all.
exactly.
Favorite color?
Red.
Favorite book?
Ooh. Oh, The Alchemist, easy.
When do you feel most like at home?
I mean, when I'm in Pristina, when I am at home.
Okay. And then all-time favorite song?
By Air Traffic, it's called like Shooting Star.
All right. Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much for being on the pod, and you are such an inspirational person, and I love talking to you today. And I know all of our viewers are going to say the same thing, and make
Thank
sure to
you so
follow,
much.
yes,